This time we have none other than our own alumni, Mr. Abhyuday Sharma. Alumni, really? Yes.
Barely left you.
I mean, there are duties of a student which an alumni can never forfeit out of, and Abhyuday has taken that very seriously. So convocation पे आके डिपार्टमेंट का काम कर रहा है. अभी अभी मन नहीं लग रहा उसको, रायपुर में बैठे बैठे भी उसको ये चाहिए कि यहाँ का काम करे. तो अपनी वेकेशन में से टाइम निकाल के he has come here to share something with us, and I think it will be very fun for us because we are in the department, and we are using the resources provided in the department for a long time, and we feel अरे आजा and हम उससे acquainted हो जाते हैं. So when a person goes out of the university and experiences something else and comes back to share all of it as a together bunch, that becomes a whole new experience. So he is here to share his experiences, resources with us, and let's give him a warm welcome.
Very flattered. Not used to this. Used to doing this, not used to this. So yeah. So I'll start with the fact that I've studied 3 years in contemplation has made me realize a bunch of things. One of those being that we tend to see contemplation as just another subject, and we tend to associate it a lot with spirituality, religious texts, and other philosophies, which is relevant, but we never actually went forward with applying it in terms of psychology. Like there is no actual framework to accommodate or assimilate information that you get in terms of contemplation, right? So that gets very difficult when you're out of your degree and I ask you, what does contemplation mean for you? So the answers are super subjective and it might not even be correct, right? And at the end of the day, we are representatives of the department and more importantly, this fascinating subject. So at the end of the day, I feel like after 3 years, I have somewhat managed to understand how we can utilize this. And that is what I'm here to break down to you. Why? Like, look at it like this. Indian traditions have gone out for years, and if you've read about it, do you know how Vedas were transferred from generation to generation? Via Shruti and Smriti, right? Like, if I say develop the cult of Ved, I pass it down to the next generation through my understanding, but that's not their job to just remember it. Their job is to understand it and build upon it, right? And then the compilation of 2 generations will be passed down to 3 generations, and the third generation will pass it down to fourth, amplifying it. So that's what I think we should be able to do. Like what I understand in my 3 years is something that I need to pass on to you so that you can build on it, right? Starting with that, I'd like to ask a very simple question. How many of you here are atheists or agnostics or pragmatists, whatever you wish to call it? Nobody? Great. Because atheism is something that is, kind of looked down upon, but I really respect it a lot because it allows you a perspective to look at it with a lot of pragmatism. Like, I've had a 180-degree turn ever since I came to the university. I had no belief. I really relied mostly on things that I can understand and see rather than having faith. Well, again, it is human nature to call out to God when you're in trouble. But other than that, I was not much of a guy in a faith, right? So, yeah. Moving on, I'd like to ask you another very important question. What do you think, why do you think is the reason us Homo sapiens are the most thriving and relevant species in the world today when we actually have no significant qualities as such? We are neither the most powerful nor the most durable, neither we outlive most species, and still we exist in huge numbers. There are still species that exist in number more than us, but we are the most relevant, we are the most thriving, and we are the most dominating, even in the face of species that are more powerful than us per se, right? So what do you think is a quality that we have that makes us special, that makes all of us equal and special. Like if I asked you, humans are the most dash species in the world, how would you fill it with an adjective? Like, what is that special quality? What do you think? Yes. Huh? Ma'am, but then again, I understand your POV, but sociability, if we encounter sociability, ants, bees are more civilized than us, and chimpanzees tend to cooperate better in small groups. Then in terms of that, we are not the most civilized either. Any other? Wise, that though is reflecting on Homo sapiens. Sapiens means wisdom, by the way. Wise humans. Good point, but most species are again sentient.
Contemplative.
Well, duh. Yeah, but yeah. No, most of you will say anything in terms of intelligence and stuff, but there are species that are able to utilize their intelligence better than us. Like, if I pick a random person in this room, or not even anybody else, myself and a chimpanzee, and I place them in a random country where I don't know the language, I don't have the currency, and I don't have any modes of communication, accommodation, or mobility, right? I'll still place my bet on the chimpanzee to survive. I'd probably die out, right? But still, we deem ourselves as the most intelligent for some reason. That we are not. We are actually made up of a compilation of several qualities, and in my elaborate studies of evolutionary biology and works of Darwin, and more importantly, if considered in today's relevance, Yuval Noah Harari, if any avid readers here. Have you heard of the book Sapiens?
Yes.
Yeah, the author of that book is Yuval Noah Harari. He has contributed a lot to how evolutionary biology functions. And based on my consumption of all this work, I have been able to boil it down or, deduct it to three qualities that make us special, that has made us relevant today. And had either of those qualities been absent, we would have been extinct long ago, right? And those qualities are, and by the way, also, humans are the most dash species in the world. The answer is adaptability. It's that simple. Adaptability has been the result of these three qualities, right? The three qualities being evolution, advancement, and civilization, right? Now think about this in detail. This is a Venn diagram for those who are not aware. So look at it like this. We tend to rely on these three qualities. A, evolution completely based on biology. The movement from Neanderthals and to Homo sapiens is biology. We have 5 fingers. We are able to use major machinery while work on really precise work, right? We are able to maintain balance. We can run for long. We can sustain on low resources, and we can survive almost everywhere if we can. But then again, there are limitations to evolution. So there are limitations to evolution. For example, if I throw you into Antarctica with no resources at all, is there any chance of survival? But we are evolved biologically, right? And there is indeed a human surviving in Antarctica today. How? With the use of advancement. What is advancement? You're a human, you have certain abilities, and I give you certain resources. You use those resources with the use of your biology. You create tools or mechanisms that can help you survive. For example, back in the years when we didn't have all this commercial stuff, humans used to kill walruses and bears with their brute strength to wear their skin to protect themselves from cold. And in a similar way, we developed other things using every single resource that we have in order to be more advanced. Everything that we have today, downright to laptops and the first invention of wheel, and every single concept that we study, including and especially economics and politics stuff, everything is an example of advancement because we have used our resources, built upon it, utilized it more, and built upon it more. But just evolution or just advancement would have still led to death because we are still alone. Then comes the third aspect, which is civilization. We learned to coexist in a community. We learned to cooperate flexibly. Now, I'll elaborate on ma'am's answer that we are sociable. We are not the most civilized, but we are the most efficiently civilized. For example, chimpanzees might be more civilized in a short group. But then again, imagine a stadium filled with chimpanzees. And what do you see? Complete chaos. And then again, if we talk about ants who are more civilized in terms of big numbers, everybody has a role and everybody cooperates. There is a norm that cannot be broken. But then again, if a single thing goes wrong, a single thing goes haywire, they're so rigidly constructed that they can't break. And if anything indeed goes wrong, the entire civilization collapses. But us, we can tend to cooperate flexibly in small numbers and in huge numbers. Like we are able to maintain a community like this, and we are still able to maintain our presence in geopolitics, right? And geopolitics is another example of civilizations because we learned that maybe communities divide, and if we tend to kill each other, we'll be the reason for our own extinction. So we drew lines, we made countries, we made communities so that we communicate and cooperate in like-mindedness rather than living in conflict. So the compilation of all these three qualities led to us humans thriving, learning from our abilities, building upon it, and then growing over the years. That's what evolution talks about, and that's what history talks about. Look at the history of the past 1,000 years, and you'll see a lot of changes because of this one simple thing, that we were flexibility collaborating in our advancements and utilizing our biology well, right? Then again, you may ask that if we are all the same, we have the same qualities naturally built in on us, then why is there a distinguishable difference between, say, Shashank and me or Sajal and me? Like there is still a bit of subjectivity left. And more so, if we talk on the lines of intelligence, there exists smart and there exists dumb. If we are all sapiens, if we are all wise humans, why is there a distinguishable difference that some people are really smart and some people are really dumb? Something to think about, right? If we are blessed with the same qualities, हमारे पास सबके पास एक विरासत है, then how is it that some people fall out better and some people are still struggling? Some people tend to manage their grades very easily, but some of us struggle despite having given a lot of efforts. Something to think about, right? Now think of it in a spectrum. Okay. Now this is the definition of intelligence according to APA. What does it say? Derive information, learn from experiences, adapt to environment, understand and correctly utilize thought. Again, think of it in terms of the model that I gave you in the Venn diagram. Have we or have we not used these to correctly utilize all these three qualities, right? But then again, there is a distinguishable difference. So let me let you on a secret. Most of us are not intelligent and neither of us are dumb. We tend to work around this. This three dots is the area of our operation. We are mostly average people, or almost all of us are average people only. Some people have a slight leaning towards intelligence, and some people have a slight leaning towards being dumb. It's a natural gravitation. And there's only one difference that separates everything. So, quoting Viziandri, he said something so profound that it stuck with me. So, before we identify intelligence, we need to understand what is dumb. Because dumb is even subjective in nature. So, in his words, dumbness or stupidity is the ability to ignore your ignorance. Right? The ability to make a mistake repeatedly, being unable to learn from it, and being still stuck in the same step. Humanity has moved forward, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Trial and error. Stupid people have been there the entire time. Right? So if you are not able to learn from your experiences, you will still struggle by the last minute, and you will be always led with an idea that I'm doing something wrong, but you will never be aware of it because you're still ignoring it, right? And intelligent people, on the other hand, people we consider smart or prodigy, they have this enormous ability to not only learn from their experiences but from others' experiences, from history, from all the subjects that are available, from all subjective concerns. They're able to somehow calculate a method in which there is minimal errors, and that is what makes them look smart, because they are the most efficient in what they do. They're able to calculate the amount of errors that they might make, and they get rid of it. And that's what we do. Over the time, they also grow, we also grow. They're not born intelligent, of course. They grew on it, right? So they're utilizing their abilities right in a manner now that we deem them intelligent. Right? Now the think on it. Yeah, I answered that bit. This is the profound difference that has enabled some of us to be smart and some of us to be dumb. Do you know what this is? This is contemplation. This is the heavy duty name that we have given to contemplation. And this might look really heavy because I've made it bold. But it is not, it is really actually simple. Let's look at it this way. Let's divide it into three halves, right? Let's take metacognition, 1, self-regulatory, 2, and capacity, 3. Okay? Starting with what is metacognition. Metacognition is, if you go at it theoretically, it's a field of philosophy, not even psychology, by the way. It by definition means thinking about thinking, right? But that is not just that simple. If you employ an ability of being self-aware, as Arushi said, if we employ that special ability and we are able to reflect on our patterns, what I did, why I did what I did, and how can it be different? Like I talk about intelligence, how are they able to minimize errors because they understand which pattern works best? Metacognition makes you self-aware as to what you're doing. You're completely conscious and you're completely self-aware about your patterns. That is the duty that metacognition serves in your life. Then regulatory is the ability, now that we've done metacognition, we understand that, yeah, this is where we are going wrong. Then what do? We develop strategies, we employ those strategies, we inference the results, and then we build more. It's a continuous cycle of trial and error, but about time when you get into practice, when you're more and more able to employ it in your life, it becomes seamless. Then you're not consciously making strategies, it's just happening naturally. And the capacity or the ability to manage these two qualities to engage in the best results is the product of contemplation. Right? Any doubts here? I hope not. Then look at it like this. If we have such an amazing tool that has been carried forward by generations and several communities, why is it that some of us are still managing to just survive while we can thrive? Right? So that is what I'm here to talk about. How can we utilize a skill as contemplation, as good as contemplation, into our daily lives? Now, break even from here. Think that I'm talking one-to-one, not in a group. Think that I'm making conversation with you and not an entire community. Think of it like that. So, there is two planes that we can study it in. There is macro and there is micro. Macro exists on a societal level, on a civilization level, on an interpersonal level, and micro exists on a personal level. My personal inadequacies, my idea of myself, my self-identity, and more importantly, my mental health. Right? We can apply NSRC or contemplation in all of these planes, but I'll start with macro. Do you know why? Because if you understand your behavior of how you perform in front of other people, you'll be able to visualize it in a third person perspective such that you'll be able to understand your patterns better. And if you're moving forward with it, now I'll try and integrate more of contemplative landscape, or as we study the domains of philosophy, spirituality, and religion that we study in the name of contemplation into it, right? So most people are done with their first semesters here, and how many of you are aware of Maslow's need hierarchy? Almost everyone, thank God. But I'll still explain because two people are unaware, right? Home is unaware. Okay, so look at it like this. This is Maslow's need hierarchy, and that is Purusharth if you have studied. Maslow's need hierarchy says that there is a basis to everything, and if your lower needs are not met, you can't move forward to your upper needs. Physiological needs talk about food, water, air, sex, right? And we need all of it because sustenance and survival depends on these things. If we don't proliferate, we can't grow, and if we don't consume, we cease to exist. And then comes the security needs, constant income, accommodation, goes on a bigger level as to how secure you feel in a community or how the scenario around you is. Then we go on to love, like, do I feel love and belongingness? And then we go on to self-esteem, how we feel about ourselves. Externally, what is our reputation, how well respected I am. And then when you're done with all of that, only then can you move to self-actualization. But if we look at it from the other perspective, this was already with us in our literature in the name of Purusharth. What does it say? Security and physiological is extremely very similar to Earth. Okay? If you study the literature of Earth Shastra, it more or less tells you the ability to manipulate your both of these lower needs to your best efficiency so that you can move up the ladder. Right? Calm is love. Dharma is more or less along the lines of self-esteem, and they intersect in the point of morality. And then we move on to the complicated part of self-actualization. Self-actualization has been recently divided into 4, and the peak of it is transcendence. Now, transcendence is equals to samadhi, is equals to mukti, is equals to moksha, is equals to nirvana, is equals to eudaimonia. Right? Different words, same meaning. But we'll fixate on this word mukti. Why mukti? Because it is an important question to ask. We were liberated from the Britishers in 1947, and we are engaging in a community with quite a lot of harmony on personal level, not on a global level. Then what is it that we want to liberate ourselves from? ये मुक्ति चाहिए किस चीज से? Has anybody managed to ask this question? That if we wish to liberate ourselves, from what exactly? You are already kind of self-sufficient. Apart from these small aspects like parents or the community at large or my professors or my dean, these are kind of irrelevant in the context. You can more or less operate on your terms. You can do whatever you wish to do, and then we are still not liberated somehow. Why and how? So before we tend to understand what to liberate ourselves from, the bigger question to ask is, what is our bondage? मेरा बंधन क्या है? ठीक है? So Hindi में it is बंधन, English में it is attachments. Attachments, cravings, and your overall fixations in life that you can't break away from. Your loved ones, your habitual patterns, your interests towards some things, and everything else that you deem relevant to your survival, which may or may not be. And what if I tell you, if you're not even aware of so many constructs that are working on you, of you, but you're not aware of it? Example? Okay. Imagine all of you are almost done with your self-esteem stage, and you're now actually contemplating like, yeah, I'm in the mood for liberation today. How do I manage it? Very complicated stuff. It's not like I can convince myself, chal, liberation ho gaya aaj. ठीक है? It's something that you need to think about, and it's a very complicated matter because it takes consistent practice. And what if and think of it like this: you're working, and there is this one guy who is me, stuck in security needs. I have to survive, and for that survival, I need money, right? And somehow, you and I are really good friends, right? So I visit you, and I ask you what's up, and you tell me like I'm like mostly content in life, and I'm trying to move forward, and I'm trying to understand what I can do more with it. And when you say that, what I see is an opportunity. How? Because you don't know what liberation means, and I don't know what liberation means. I can tell you whatever liberation is, I can tell you, without you being able to understand if it's right or wrong. Right? So if I tell you, bro, liberation is when you are constantly in pleasure. Anything that is completely pleasurable is liberation. If you understand Samadhi and all these texts, they also talk immensely about pleasure. But it's something that transcends pleasure actually. It is not on the same domains. So if I distract you and if I manipulate the idea that liberation is actually a term of pleasure, and then you're like, "Oh, yeah, that kind of makes sense because I'm still unhappy. And the day I'll be happy, maybe then I'll be liberated." Right? And then you're like, "How do I manage it?" And I'm like, "Bro, you're in for a treat because I can give it to you." You know how? I know of some stones which you, if you carry in your life, it'll give you enormous strength and power. It will liberate you eventually. And you're like, "Damn, how do I get these?" Like, "You're in for a luck because I can manage it." And you're like, "How can I help you?" And I'll be, "Easy money." And what do? I pick some random stones from my backyard and I deliver it to you. Be happy. Right? And even in placebo, it might work for a few days. You'll feel like, yeah, okay, it is working, I'm happy. Come on. But it will weigh off when the circumstances hit you like a truck. Because not only this time you were in placebo and ignorant towards your problem, but you are also trying to believe something that does not exist. And you will come back to me again because I'm the smart one, right? And I'll send you another batch of stones. Constant income works for me. And this is how the cycle of consumerism started. How do you think Britishers entered India? How do you think consumerism works? People think that buying some products, buying a bigger house, buying a bigger car, buying better products will make them happy. They earn more money, they buy those products, they feel happy, they feel sad, they earn more money, buy more products. Eventually you're stuck in a cycle where you're holding on to some stuff that you don't even need to feel happy for a moment that will not even be relevant after a while. Consumerism. This is one example. Another way to look at it is political ideology. Now say that you don't care about liberation. Okay? You're completely content. Self-esteem stage as it is pretty good. No? So I want dominance, I want power, I want sustenance of my position. So I just go, "Guys, all of you are threatened by Jews, and if we don't eliminate Jews today, you will die tomorrow." False threat to security. All of you are, "Damn, is it true? Am I going to be threatened? Is it really a threat to my survival?" And I convince you such that I am able to justify my position in killing millions of Jews. Right? And somehow that happened. And humans at large, the wisest of all, couldn't spot that happening. Right? Works on even basic levels. Like think of it in terms of religion. I am a guru or I am a pandit, say. I'm a very elaborate pandit. And I'd say, if you all don't do what I say, तुम सबको नर्क मिलेगा. ठीक है? And I'm inducing this false fear which will lead you to do as I say, because your idea of moksha is now swarg. And if you don't achieve it, you will feel like you're not good enough. Right? Like leave all of these. Even if we consider these abstract things. Like either of you can say it is not relevant to me. I don't indulge in these things. But then again, it happens all around us. Like look at it from the idea of substance abuse. Somebody utilizes a material and they feel happy, they feel instant gratification, they feel what they misunderstand as closer to moksha, they indulge in it more, and more or less they engage in a cycle where they can't escape anymore, right? And courtesy to Dr. Vinay Chandra sir, we got this amazing model. Okay? Most of you I don't think are aware of it. Now look at this with an example. Okay? Only because you can understand it better with an example actually. Imagine in a household of a pandit, he used to put bhog to the guru every day, right? And he used to pick a glass and fill it with milk. Few days later, he adopted a cat. And now the cat, being mischievous, drank the milk before it उसपे भोग लगाया जा सकता है, right? So what the pandit did, he bought a basket and he used to put the cat in the basket till after the system is done, right? So this became a ritual. Every day the pandit used to pick a cat, put it in the basket, and do his job, and then free it. The son came, started the practice, and before the cat, while the cat still existed, he used to put the cat in the basket, not being aware why it is happening, but it is still relevant. And then came the third generation. There is no longer a cat, so he bought a cat. Because this has been a ritual for 2 generations, right? And then came the 4th generation. And like, we are trying to buy cats, we are filling them in baskets, but we don't understand why. No literature ever that exists justifies it, and we are not even questioning it. So these are the 4 stages. Conscious competence is the idea that cat is drinking milk, let's trap the cat. Unconscious competence, dad used to do it, I'll do it too, but it's still relevant. Unconscious incompetence, let's buy a cat. And conscious incompetence is why. And from unconscious incompetence, as contemplative psychologists or students of contemplation, we need to move forward to conscious incompetence, where we pragmatically observe and question the basis of several things that exist. Right? We need to ask certain questions to be self-aware or to develop the right strategies to move forward. Moving on, now that we observe it on a micro level, now that you ask how do we do it on our mental health, then the answer is quite actually really simple. FYI, before I start, what is the most relevant practiced psychotherapy today? Anyone? CBT. And how does its model works? Look at it. Like pay actual attention to it and keep in mind the things that I've said. No, it's because
मेरी क्लासेस के बाद है, तो I can skip the classes.
No, I actually used your module to study CBT in detail. Yeah. So look at it like this. If you're indulging in negative thoughts, it will result in negative feelings and then negative behavior. And it becomes a cycle until and unless you object to it, challenge it, and change it. So more or less, can we say that indulging in therapy such as CBT is technically assisted contemplation in a manner of speaking?
What contemplation?
Assisted contemplation. Because somebody who knows it better is enabling me to indulge in it. But then again, if you understand how everything works, you can bring it to your personal practices. And that's how you can, be able to usher a better idea of mental health and well-being and a better practice at large. Now, contemplative practices in all landscape tend to focus on these 3 things. One is self-awareness, second is control, and eventually in a really long shot, liberation. Sounds easy, extremely difficult, I've tried it. Okay, so now that we've talked a bit about self-awareness, and we've talked about liberation. So we focus on something that we can actually do from today really easily, because it is all about understanding this one thing simply. Take the anchor of control. Now, in the planes of psychology, we deem it internal locus of control and external locus of control. Things that are in our control and not in our control. Simple as that. In contemplative landscapes, the first thing that you'll study is Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita has enumerated 4 yogas: Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Raj Yoga. Again, if we start with Karma Yoga fixates and talks about Nishkam Karma. Nishkam Karma says, do your job, practice the things that are in your control, and detach from the outcomes, because outcomes are not in your control. If you attach yourselves to the outcomes, you will forever be in misery. Right? Fairly straightforward. Again, not being able to do practical, you don't want to work it out. Sure, there is another pattern, Bhakti Yoga. Do whatever you want, leave everything else which are not in your control to whoever you believe in, whomsoever you believe in. And then even if you're not able to do that because I am pragmatic, okay, then you tend to engage in something called Jnana Yoga, which is to understand what exactly in your control, and other things that tend to push you forward to a level of self-awareness where you can actually function. What we are all doing here today, right now, is Jnana Yoga, right? I'd go into Raj Yoga, but Raj Yoga is completely another presentation. It goes in depth. I can talk about it with you guys if you want, whenever you are free. But right now, let's skip that bit. And that is Bhagavad Gita. Then you will say Eastern has it all sorted. And how about the West? West has psychology. Why can't it say this as straightforward? But it does. Have any of you heard of Stoicism?
Yes.
Right? Stoicism, very famous these days. It's a Greek philosophy that talks more or less about the same thing. Marcus Aurelius का नाम सुना है? Marcus Aurelius, yeah. So it talks about the dichotomy of control, and its founder Epictetus said it even more straightforward than Bhagavad Gita. Some things are up to us and some things are not. Feels like somebody said it like that. Okay. But then again, he enumerated things that are indeed in our control and things that are not. Your thoughts, your beliefs, your attitudes, emotions, and actions are in your control. And if you are able to do just that bit right, things will start happening. But what are not in your control? External events, the actions and opinions of others, our reputations, etc. And the overall outcome of whatever you do is not in your hands. So if we leave it be and focus on what we do, we just might do things right. Right? As simple as that. Now you would say that these are 2 philosophies. But do you know how contemplative landscape works and how we can utilize it? Now imagine I am standing here and there is an elephant in the room. Right? And there are 10 people, all of us are surrounding it. And now I'll make all of you stand at the random edges and I'll ask you to stand where you are and tell me what you see. Some of you will say that I'm looking at something that looks like a huge pillar. Some of you will look at it and say, I see a huge grey boulder. I am standing near the face, so I'll be able to like, there is 2 ears, there is a trunk, there is tusks, and I'll be able to describe it more humanely. But there is again somebody like, say, Yugal and Jash, they'll be looking at the elephant's ass. So what do they understand of it? There is roughly any interpretation of it, right? But then again, philosophy works in amazing ways. Now, if we anchor an elephant as control, the ways to look at it looks like this. Okay? So let's look at it like this. There are 4 domains of observing control. One is theistic inquiry, which focuses on giving a supernatural power a face. Gods, which includes Islam, Christianity, Judaism, and Hinduism, of course. But Hinduism tends to play a double role. So we also step a bit into the spiritual inquiry, which encompasses Taoism, Buddhism, Jainism, Ajivika, and again, Hindu literature talks about it. If we delve into the literature of Shad Darshanas, it talks more or less about this. And then they have a practicing inquiry. For example, if you are familiar with the works of logotherapy and again mindfulness, uh, these are some aspects that we can practice and bring into our daily practices without engaging in in-depth philosophy. It's fairly straightforward, it's simple. But then we go into something called philosophical inquiry. There is a bunch. These are barely to name a few. There is Epicureanism, there is Stoicism, there is Absurdism, there is Existentialism, there is Nihilism, right? And now, when I mentioned about the perspective of Jash and Yugal, how do you look at it? Absurdist Albert Camus, if you have heard of him, right? Hinduism says it like this. Camus says it like this. What he says, whatever you see is chaotic, absurd. Don't even try to do anything about it. It's not in your control. If you mess with it, it messes back. So what do? What matters in your life is how you make sense of the absurd and what you do about it. Practically, Karma Yoga said in different words. It is more from a nihilistic, close to nihilistic perspective, but it says more or less the same thing, right? So this is how contemplative landscapes work, and what we as individuals need to do is take the liberty, walk around the room, walk the 360 degrees, understand everybody's perspective, come back here and say it's an elephant. Now the anchors might change. Control might be something else, but more or less, indulging in literature that provokes contemplation allows you to understand things from several perspectives that gives you more of an absolute truth than just a truth, because you're enhancing it and understanding it firsthand. And that's why it is extremely very important that you pay heed to literature that exists, because it is the works of several people who came to some conclusions after living experiences. And if you don't learn from their experiences, and if you don't learn from your experiences, what does that make you? Dumb. Right? So that is where contemplation is effective in our lives, so that we utilize it well, work on it, and work on ourselves. What are some products that contemplation may give us is we can make ourselves more self-aware to do better and become better, right? And understanding our control to not fall weak when you lose something, because you would understand that it was never yours in the first place, right? And then what contemplation might enable you to do is reach the fullest of your potential that you can probably reach, because there is only so much time, and if we just do it better, we'll become the best version of ourselves every day, right? And free yourself from all those attachments. Be very self-aware on the negative patterns that you indulge in. Work with it. Become so interested and so practicing about it that you are able to fix your negative patterns and become an overall better person, right? So these are the things that what contemplation is supposed to do in domains of psychology and personal life, right? So now consider all yourselves liberated, because yeah, that is the end of my presentation. Now, some questions if you have any. Yes.
So I have a question. So now that we are talking about two different perspectives, right?
Yeah.
Psychology, whenever we talk about, there are two kinds of perspectives, Eastern, Western, and जो आपने बोला कि ये हिंदू वाला ऐसे पकड़ते हैं and वो ऐसे पकड़ते हैं, absurdism वाले वैसे. So don't you think that it is largely a theme of Western psychology to reduce the meaning of life, and on the other hand जब हमारी हिंदू कल्चर या फिर कोई भी ईस्टर्न पर्सपेक्टिव की बात आती है तो मीनिंग ऑफ लाइफ को काफी ज्यादा होगा दिया जाता है. But why does it work in Western?
Because they are more exposed to what is called an array of experiences. We tend to indulge in literature, but we don't tend to understand where it came from. Almost all of literature that exists in the West is backed up by a history of experiences. Like if you say read Albert Camus, there's a lot of literature that exists on his life, and if you read it, you'll understand how he thinks what he thinks. And if you read that bit, you'll understand you're no different that than he is. Now look at it like this. I talked about Maslow's need hierarchy, right? Now, before Britishers and Mughals plundered our country, we were collectively, as a civilization, on self-actualization state. Because there was so abundance of literature, there's so abundance of practitioners that more than one philosophies, more than one practices could coexist without fighting. There are so many divisions just in our culture, but they all coexisted because we were collectively in a state of self-actualization. Now look at the time period where all the Western literature came from. It came between 1700s to 2000s, most literature. And would you not say that the geopolitical scenario around those 300 years was so difficult that all of us were reduced to our security needs? So when you're down to your security needs, you tend to kind of be nihilistic about things. So that perspective kind of sticks in the things that you infer, right? So you'll see a consistency in the tone and themes because the backdrop is seemingly grim in nature. Yeah.
But we have observed in Indian history that despite their basic needs being satisfied, there has been a need for self-actualization.
Yeah.
So the whole hierarchy that we talk about falls trapped down there, that these are just a horizontal array of needs,
Yeah.
and we could go from anywhere to anywhere.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, indeed, you can. That's why I just, for the sake of explanation, put Maslow's hierarchy alongside Purusharth as a hierarchy, but Purusharth is not actually a hierarchy. It is explained as the four pillars, and indulging in either is good enough, right? Now look at it like this: you work yourself from physiological needs to self-esteem needs, and when you reach self-actualization, you realize that all of what I did was not relevant, right? What do you think monkhood does? Okay, now good enough, you've developed good enough self-esteem, now go back to being your physiological needs. Because you have to fight for alms every single day. It teaches you detachment from all the things that you have done, and there are several perspectives to it. So yeah, your point is quite right. We can move at it horizontally. Maslow's need hierarchy talks about things in a different manner because the purpose it serves is slightly different, right? But this is how, yeah, that is how it works. We can move horizontally, and just for the sake of a better understanding, I have facilitated that bit.
So I have this question, like so far as I have observed it on myself. So as per this specific theory which you spoke,
Yeah.
so we can have a control over our thoughts.
Yeah.
So but when we think in another way, the objects in the world, they trigger our thoughts.
Yeah.
So is it like having control over thoughts mean like we don't welcome new thoughts, or is it something?
No, let's look at it from a cognitive perspective, okay? So, cognitive theory talks about assimilation and accommodation. Like you develop new schemas and you adjust those thoughts. So, it is never ever in your nature to reject something. It is only how you accommodate it and if you deem it important enough to accommodate it, right? And now that you talk about it, it is for things to settle, right? Like, okay, this is some another thing because you asked the question. Now I think of it, and I think there is a desperate need to talk about it. A lot of people think meditation is equivalent to contemplation, but meditation is not contemplation. Meditation is something that precedes contemplation. If meditation is the starters, contemplation is the main course. Why? Now look at it like this. Contemplation is done best when you have a good self-reflection. But if you're on a seashore, would you be able to look at the water and see a clear picture of yourself? Why? where it's completely chaotic, it's in complete movement back and forth, and to get a clear picture there is nearly impossible. But on the other hand, there's a still lake. Would you be able to get a clear image of yours when you look into the clear lake? Yeah? What meditation does is to take your mind from that seashore to being the still lake, such that you get a clear reflection of who you are, what you are. Because if your head is in chaos, self-reflection will only lead to more chaos. Right? So that is what it does. It's a compilation of certain practices. It's not self-sufficient. Either of what you do is not self-sufficient, and you learn from practice. So what I'm telling you is, whatever comes in the seashore, accept it as it is. For when it's settled, you'll know what is important and what isn't. Right? Yeah.
Do you think contemplation is for everyone?
Yeah.
And what I mean is, do you think the fruits of contemplation, the sweet juice of contemplation,
Yeah.
can be experienced by everyone the same?
No.
How?
Because then again, there's this thing called subjectivity. Like, look at it like this. If there is a contemplative landscape and all of it talk about the same goal, but there are still different pathways to it. And if you're engaging in different pathways, how can your experiences be similar to others? Even by the fragmented difference of off-roading can give you another experience. Then again, matters how you did it, who you did it with, at what age you did it, how much effort you had to put into it, what distance you had to travel. Some people will have it easy, some people will have it difficult. So at the end of the day, we are reaching the same goal, but our experiences might be vividly different. It is for everybody, but it is indeed a fact that it is not going to be the easiest path for anyone. It will be slightly easy for some people, but mostly difficult for everyone because we are all pretty average, honestly. Yeah.
Can you go to the slide that conscious incompetence?
Yeah.
And you added to the line, added a line to the last that we as psychologists have to mainly stick to that conscious incompetence. That why first observe the situation,
Yeah.
and then why is it happening or not.
Yeah.
So before that, you have said the conscious competence and unconscious that.
Yeah.
Those are, can I just say that those are also the factors which are like initially the tradition came,
Yeah.
then his son also that journey then. So those factors are adding to that conscious and then
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You will develop a pattern for a reason, but the ability or the self-awareness to understand when to reject that pattern because it served its purpose is important, right? Like, think of it like this: when you fall sick, you take medicines for a week, right? And then you know when to stop. But just because you fell sick 3 years ago, you continue to take paracetamol every single day. You need to learn when to stop, because if you don't, it becomes an unjustifiable chaos, right? So that is what the pattern talks about.
is it like a pattern and then we come to a self-awareness in the conscious incompetence.
Yeah.
Where to stop and where to
Yeah.
let go.
We are mostly stuck in the stage of unconscious competence in a lot of things. What we need to do is become conscious about it. We need to certainly ask a lot of whys in the process. It might not be the most pleasurable experience, but it is important. Any other questions? Yes.
Do you think spirituality is subjective?
Spiritual goals are subjective, spirituality is not.
So the question mainly was why spirituality is not on the micro level and on the...
No, I never said that. It exists both on macro level and micro level. See, any pathway that I have talked about in the contemplative landscape doesn't exist in a single plane, it exists holistically, right? If you are a practitioner of a philosophy, you can apply it in every sphere of your life. That's what makes philosophy, because it gives you a lens to look at things in a certain way that is able to assimilate better in your head. Like, we are all looking at the world through a keyhole, Because if we see the world as it is, our brain will collapse, right? So we are all choosing to look at it with a certain lens, and philosophy is what the lens is. Because in spirituality, like look at it like this: people who are spiritualists tend to have a certain behavior that is consistent in all spheres of their life. People who engage in religion have a certain pattern that is consistent in all spheres of life. Like, that is how it works. People, like, look at people who call themselves atheists, they're pragmatists, and they say that I look at things from scientific perspective, but look at their perspective on understanding every single thing that works. They won't take anything that cannot be justified, that cannot be put into like visual proof. They don't accept it, and that is consistent in all phases of their life. They tend to become slightly paranoid also, right? Because if I tell you something and your orientation is that I need some evidences to believe in it, then your orientation becomes like that. When you are spiritualist, you tend to kind of engage in behavior that is dictated by several pathways. Now, spirituality is also quite a huge domain, and there are several pathways to it. So, yeah, it can be pretty consistent in all fields of life. Like it works from got into spirituality because I wanted an assistance with my mental health, my personal level mental health. But in my exploration of how spirituality and its literature works, I got exposed into how it works on the macro level as well. Okay. I hope that was. Yeah.
So I just want to understand your perspective on it. I don't have doubt. So you spoke about 4 yogas, Karma Yoga, Bhakti
Yeah.
Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and you also spoke about that elephant wala thing.
Yeah.
We have different aspects to understand the thing.
Yeah.
Or the element.
Yeah.
So when we talk about, like, for me, Bhakti Yoga is one, and for someone Bhakti Yoga is not one, and I am following the Bhakti Yoga. As because I am following Bhakti Yoga, I will become the part of the cult.
Yeah.
Slowly, I will become the part of the cult. I will miss the essence, or I will miss the element.
Yeah.
And I will start thinking, oh, I am following the right path,
Yeah.
because I am following the Bhakti Yoga.
Yeah.
So, for me, following, not just we have to follow Bhakti Yoga, we have to follow Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Raj Yoga, simultaneously to understand
Yeah.
the essence of the reality or the life.
Absolutely.
So, what is your take?
See, look at it like this. Have you heard of the Sattva Rajas Tamas theme? Right? There is one dominant, but it does not mean that the others are absent. It just means that they exist, but in smaller levels. अगर कोई बोल रहा है that I'm a rajasic person, it doesn't mean that I'm absent and devoid of sattva and tamas, right? Similarly, when you practice yoga, say that you're a karma yogi, you're engaging in Jnana Yoga also, Raj Yoga also, and Bhakti Yoga also, but you're dominatingly practicing Karma Yoga because that has become your orientation towards things, right? You find it more comfortable, or you find it more justifiable and comforting in your practice that if I engage in Karma Yoga, I may reach there faster because of the circumstances and experiences that I've had in my life. This orientation feels more authentic to me.
Again, the orientation comes from our thought.
Yeah.
So how we can justify that this is the thing which is working?
You'll feel very comfortable with it. You'll feel natural at it. Like, how do you understand if some career is right for you? Right? Because when you work at it, you realize that you're not feeling a lot of difficulty, you're not feeling tired of learning more, doing more. Right? That's what when we say, take a job where you don't feel like you're doing a job, is because of that. If you're naturally a karma yogi, and if I ask you to engage in bhakti yoga, you'll feel good, but you'll feel not as comfortable as you would engaging in another philosophy. And that is exactly why this entire contemplative landscape exists. There is so much subjectivity because people are different and pathways are different. So as long as the path leads to the ultimate goal, any path you pick is okay. But in the process of it, remain extremely self-aware that your goals or your practices are not distorting themselves. Right? That is the basis of it all. Like look at it on the perspective of, or how do I say this? Okay, never mind. Any other questions?
Yeah, I just want to add,
Yeah.
like Sajal said, the horizontal,
Yeah.
it's not vertical.
Yeah.
If you see the different yogas that you mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita,
Yeah.
it's not either or.
Yeah.
It has to be, and very interestingly, even the Patanjali Yoga Sutra,
Yes, ma'am.
it is mentioned as the limbs.
Yeah.
Okay, so you cannot live with one limb and neglect the other.
Yeah.
And you can also take it that because every one of us is different, so there are different ways which has been suggested. Probably one through the Patanjali Yoga Sutra, one through the probably the Vedas. I'm not very clear with that. Okay, I'm still yet to get to that.
Ma'am's actually point is actually good. Ma'am, from what I read of Patanjali Yoga Sutra, it integrates all the yogas together.
All of it. Like bhakti cannot be one aspect.
Yeah.
Okay. And you will have, and it also prepares you to the final stage.
Absolutely.
All of it. You need to do certain things to prepare your mind. You need to do certain things to prepare your body. You need to do certain things. That is why you have yama and niyama. One is your micro level, the other is the macro level. So all of it is integrated into the Eastern perspectives. Yeah, there are different ways of seeing it. Probably the Western takes it from us, puts it in a different label and gives it to you. However, the main content would remain the same. So our intention would be to probably follow the path, and it is open. It is open on both sides. You can stay here, you can go there, like in the Maslow's hierarchy, you can stay with your needs of the Artha and Kama, or you can move ahead. It is up to you. I hope that would give more clarity.
Yeah, absolutely.
The horizontal.
It even works in a ways where you can read all of it, reject all of it, and come up with your own idea. Like this is going to be my philosophy. Have any of you heard of Charvak?
Yes.
So that's self-explanatory, no? Any other questions? Yeah.
What should one do when there's conflict between Swadharma and Dharma? Like, for example, Karna in the Mahabharata, classical texts, his Swadharma was, as a warrior, was to kill the people from the righteous path. But the Dharma was that what Sri Krishna had told him, like to leave everything. But then his Swadharma was to fight for his friend. What should one do and how one should resolve? Like,
see, the thing is, you have hid your own answer in your question. Karn is the explanatory example that you need to align your Swadharma with your Dharma, otherwise you will reach a fatal end.
How to resolve it?
Because when you practice contemplation, Karn was such a righteous guy. Since day one of the war, he knew that he is fighting the wrong side. Did he manage to change it? No. Had he, would it have been different? Exactly. So when you have the clear conscious reason of what is right and what is wrong, and if you do nothing about it, only then there can be conflict. What you need to do is be self-aware and align your Swadharma to your Dharma. And if you are the one who's not lining it, you're practically embracing the chaos that is coming forward. You're adapting and accepting conflict as it is, as Karna was accepting. Karna was never unaccepting that he's not doing the right thing. Yeah. So he was completely embracing that, this is happening. Okay, and I'll meet my end when it comes.
He was in wrong side, but he has developed a self-awareness that I am in wrong side. But he was not able to manage.
He made the decision consciously.
Conscious one.
Yeah, he made the decision consciously. Wrong side, so be it. What is more important to me as a person is that I remain loyal and fight by my friend, even if he is fighting for the wrong thing. Something that we all tend to do at one point in time, right? Yeah.
See, Dharma is very mentioned that Dharma is subtle.
Yeah.
Okay. That is what where you otherwise some ho gaya to tum karoge kya?
Yeah.
There is no room for improvement. You got 100 out of 100. So you need to improve upon it.
Yeah.
Yudhishthira also knew.
Absolutely. But he's still engaged in it.
That is why you have Mahabharata. Nahi to kuch nahi hota.
And technically, the fascinating thing about Mahabharata is read it from each perspective and you still find it right.
Yes.
That is another thing. I was supposed to talk about that also once upon a time. Couldn't happen.
Yeah, very interesting book. It was suggested by Sonia ma'am, Sonia Sanchay ma'am when she had come here. It's called The Difficulty of Being Good by Guru Charan Das. I'm reading it right now. It actually helps you understand, the different ways of how you can interpret.
Right.
Specifically, it orients. The book is on the Mahabharata, but again, it is understanding the Mahabharata through the conflicts which Aniket said now.
Yeah.
Swadharma, dharma.
Yeah.
And how do we justify karma? How do we justify Yudhishthira and all that? So you can try to read that book. It's good.
Also, since ma'am suggested some readings, if Aniket, especially you, if any of you is interested in understanding the perspective of Karna in Mahabharata, there is this amazing book called Pratyunjay by Shivaji Savant. Read that.
By
Shivaji Savant. It's in
English, man.
English maybe or Hindi maybe. Any other questions? None? Then none? Okay. If nothing, then I guess that is the end of it.
वही मैं बोल रही हूँ, क्लब एक्टिविटी इनिशिएट भी खुद करेगा, पोस्टर भी खुद बनाएगा, स्ट्रक्चर भी खुद बनाएगा, सब वही करेगा.
You can do it.
Definitely he can do it, but we are really thankful to you, Abhyuday, for taking out this time out of your vacation to illuminate all of us with your knowledge, with your expertise, with your resources. And to be honest, I did not know he was coming out of his vacation. Otherwise, I would have strongly said, क्यों आ रहा है तू? मेरे को लगा कि वो अपनी क्लासेस में वहाँ पर होगा, उसका मन नहीं लग रहा होगा, आ रहा है हमसे मिलने.
That is also true.
Okay. So yes.
मेरे को पता भी नहीं था कि इसके लिए आया है. मेरे को कल बताया. मेरे को भी लगा था कि वो घूमने फिरने के लिए आया है.
Very typical of you girls.
See, but that is the kind of image we have for Abhyuday, that he can genuinely come for his people, for meeting his people. If he's feeling little bit, missing them, he would genuinely do it out of his expertise. But yeah.
Also say ki the way you enjoyed this entire presentation, I think like you enjoyed it like a vacation.
Yeah. So it was his vacation. Yes. It was just that हमारा perception नहीं था वो.
इनके लिए vacation ही है.
हाँ, उनका vacation ही चल रहा है. Anybody who wants to give feedback to this, this would be an open.
I'd appreciate it. Once more. बाहर में लो.
Yeah, he is here. Till when he is here?
I'm till tomorrow evening.
So till tomorrow evening, if there are any doubts, if there are any discussion that you want to continue with him, he's available 24/7. रात को. Dinner पे he'll be at Bistro. You guys can come and have a discussion. It's a open table. FCBS ही बैठता है उधर. Yeah, so it's all of you are welcome. Anybody else who wants to give feedback?
Really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, that is also feedback. Anybody who wants to appreciate, they are also welcome.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I keep telling these newbies here who joined newly, especially this new batch, that your seniors have set the standards. Okay. Even the PG new ones, I keep telling them. So this is the standard. And you're expected to maintain it.
And build on it.
Yes.
Please.
Yeah, so
when I was referring to you that your seniors have, so this is what I was referring to, all your seniors. So तुम लोगों का contribution अभी हुआ नहीं है. So this is your reference point. Okay.
I think we will take Abhyuday as an example. हमारी club members, हम तो बहुत बड़ी बैच है. इनकी बैच के टाइम पे बहुत कम बच्चे रहते थे. And let's agree कि club activity में सिर्फ FCBS ही attend करता था. ठीक है? और उसमें भी
अटेंडेंस कंपल्सरी.
हाँ, उसमें भी क्योंकि वरना सैटरडे के प्लान बने तो वो भी गायब है. ठीक है? But with Abhyuday being the